your rights twice trampled. It's time for justice, time to end the stealing and begin the healing. Justice for First Nations now. Free Shawn Brant immediately.
Let's get the OPP out of TMT.
Free Shawn Brant immediately.
Who wants the OPP out of TMT?
Free Shawn Brant immediately.
Let's get the OPP out of TMT.
Free Shawn Brant immediately.
Turtle Island to Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
Ardoc to Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
6 Nations to Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
Tyendinaga to Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
Woo!
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us this morning on such short notice. Thank you for being here with us today. And I want to acknowledge before we get started that we are, in fact, standing on land that belongs to the Mississaugas of the New Credit. So just to put that out there. I had a long conversation with Shawn this morning, who is calling from maximum security detention. And that's why we're all here today, is around the situation in Tyendinaga and the recent arrests of 5 Mohawk people defending the land, including Shawn Brant. And, there really hasn't been much coming out in the media around this situation. And the stuff that has been coming out, there's not a lot of truth in what we're seeing in the media. And so one of the things that Shawn said this morning, and he's so angry, and one of the things he said this morning, he said, I want people to know. I want people to believe me. I just want people to believe us. So let's talk about some things that are actually happening, okay? And if there are some media people here, maybe they didn't bother to show up, but if they are here, why don't we show some integrity and responsibility to a man and to a people who have conducted themselves consistently with an unbelievable amount of personal integrity despite the adversarial conditions and the constant repression that they face. So let's conduct ourselves with some integrity and speak to truth. Speak to the facts. So the first thing people need to understand is that Shawn's original charges around this whole trumped up idea that he had threatened officers from the military. Let's make sure that we all understand and remember it's a fact Shawn Brant was acquitted of all those charges. It's a fact that those military officers did not seek out to lay charges against Shawn Brant. In fact, they were approached by the OPP, and they only laid charges after the OPP questioned them, after an officer who was criticized in the judgment by that judge who sat on that trial for his biased leading of those officers and encouragement of them to lay charges against Shawn Brant. It's a fact, too, that these charges only came out months after this incident, and they only came out days after Shawn, as a spokesperson from Tyendinaga, announced that the Mohawks would be taking disruptive action on June 29th, and all of a sudden these charges came about. In fact, Shawn Brant spent 2 months in jail and 8 months under very restrictive bail conditions that don't allow him to participate in the protection of his own land because of these bogus trumped-up charges in the first place. And when we're talking about what happened most recently, what we need to know is that Shawn Brant has been accused in the military of being, accused by the media of being on charges that are unrelated to protest, that are assault and drug charges. In fact, Shawn Brant was charged with possession of a small amount of marijuana. In fact, I would put up a wager that most of the people in this crowd might smoke a little bit of pot now and again, and I don't think that it has a real bearing on a person's personal integrity or the fact that they are indeed rightful spokespeople, rightful defenders of their land, and that they behave in a fashion that ought not to be criminalized, that ought in fact to be celebrated and honored by all of us. The facts of this case are that a woman, her mother, a grandmother, and a 9-year-old girl were under attack by a known racist who approached them wielding a baseball bat. He approached them wielding a baseball bat while they were on a corner on an intersection as a courtesy of the people of that small town, in order to let them know that there was a blockade further down the road and that they could turn around. They wouldn't have to turn around if they took a divergent route at that point. And this man approached them wielding a baseball bat. And when Shawn Brant came upon that scene, this woman and this little girl was crying, and she was pleading for protection from this man who is still there spinning his tires trying to scare the hell out of them. And Shawn told me this morning, he said, you know what? I would be happy, I would be honored to serve 10 years if in fact I had done an assault and I had had to do that to defend this little girl and defend her mom. But the fact is, I didn't assault anybody. I didn't do anything. The OPP have been looking for a reason from day one to put me back in jail and to do everything that they can to disrupt leadership and to disrupt the kind of reclamation, the kind of power that's coming out of this community. They found a chance and they took it. That woman and that grandmother and her child, they called the police themselves to have charges laid against this racist man who was wielding a baseball bat at them. Fact, no charges were laid against this man. And it's also a fact that people need to know that Shawn Brant, while he was in custody at that OPP office, was repeatedly told that they would slit his throat, that they would kill him, that they were going to do his family. And we all need to understand that is the context in which people are in jail. It is a tremendous amount of obvious, vehement racism that is coming out from the OPP under the leadership, the direct leadership of Commissioner Fantino, who is on site in Napanee, who knows goddamn well that charges are a setup, that the OPP is out to get and undermine the leadership in that community any way that they possibly can. It is a fact that people are protecting their own land that even the Canadian government has been forced to recognize is their own land. While year after year, hundreds of thousands of tons of gravel are dug out of their own earth, their own land, and they are supposed to stand aside, just as KI is supposed to stand aside and RDOC is supposed to stand aside as the very land from underneath them is pillaged the way that it has been pillaged for the last 200 years. And when people stand up, that's why we're here today, to stand with them, to say we will not tolerate seeing First Nations people criminalized and jailed and taken away from their families and their communities. Shawn Brant with a 1-month-old baby at home. And the OPP know goddamn well that he is not guilty of doing anything, and they would put him in jail.
Motions have been entering year after year. The waiting is over, the warning is clear. Be fair to First Nations, put justice in gear. Immediately!
It's OPP out of TMT!
Free Shawn Brant immediately!
The OPP out of TMT!
Free Shawn Brant immediately! OPP and TMT! Free Shawn Brant immediately!